Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was homeless, you opened your door. When I was laughed at, in fact, you stood at my side. When I was happy, you shared in my joy. What more can be said? Remember, this program is to touch lives, and at the end of today, you will be linked to something that will excite you. And so, our esteemed viewers, you are welcome to BMK Media Productions Studio, presenting you with another exciting program, Humble Beginning. I remain Ben Millers, your chief host. The last episode was awesome, but I can guarantee this program because we are loaded with lots of packages you have never seen before, and you cannot afford to miss on today's program. We are bringing you another wonderful guest for today. The last episode was awesome, but I bet you today's episode is going to be wonderful because this house is full. We have lots and lots of packages for you. We are going to introduce you to another platform that can empower you. Remember, this program is about empowerment. Every rose has its thorns. Just as every good situation happens with adversity in life. And to be successful in any business venture as an entrepreneur would demand more than just starting up new ventures every day, only to expect huge amount of gains overnight. This is a platform, Humble Beginning, where to look at performance and achievement in any walk of life, to present to our viewers successful business entrepreneurs across the globe with strong, assertive, who are sensitive to guide those living in the ghettos and among others who are disconnected socially, economically, politically, educationally, and psychologically. You're already smiling. Honestly, you are welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is the platform, Humble Beginning.
Okay.
Because there is always a trace of humility in the face of my guest, and it's just showing too colorful. Our audience would want to be bored. They want to get to meet you. Who is this fireball?
Thank you so much for that introduction. But I'd like to say that my name is Bejula Iwola. I'm an artist, an art historian. I teach at the Department of Creative Arts, Visual Arts in particular. And I run two platforms. One is a non-governmental organization. It's a non-profit, the Women and Youth Art Foundation, which I founded in 1994 for teaching women and youth different artistic skills, various arts and crafts which they could use for economic empowerment. And the other one is Master Art Classes, which is a post-COVID intervention which started, early this year, and both of them are channeled towards passing on skills to people, and also using those skills to make a living, to better their living conditions by making art that they could sell. So in a nutshell, I am a teacher. I've been teaching at the University of Lagos since 2002, but I actually started teaching in the university in 1991. Yes.
91. Anyone will ask about this noble vision of yours?
How did it get started? I would say that it's been a long journey. I grew up in the city of Benin. Benin is a city of arts and crafts, and my mother, Princess Elizabeth Olowu, was the first female bronze caster, the first female to go into metal casting in Benin, which was a strictly male preserve. And so I grew up a strong woman, very active, always producing art. And I also learned a lot from my university professors at the Department of Creative Arts, University of Benin, and also the artisans in the city of Benin, the bronze casters and the wood carvers. So I grew up with so much art activity going on around me, and it just became natural that I should study art at the university. So I remember when I was much younger, I used to go with my mother. She was hired as also for free to teach women in the marketplace in Benin City, and they used to use the Uropota Hall, which was the town center, for art classes, and I would go with her, also demonstrating to the women, and they were always very excited that, how can this young girl know all of this art, that's being taught. Sometimes even when we have the cameras rolling, recording the sessions, the cameraman is asking questions, what did you put into that chemical, what did you do, how did you do this time, that pattern, and all of that. So it was really a very interesting thing for me, interesting start for me as a young girl. I got into this whole idea of teaching skills, and I thought that when I became much older and I could have a place of my own and continue with what my mother had started a long time ago in Benin City. So in 1994, when I had my first child, I was at the University of Ibadan. I wasn't working there, but I was newly married, and there were a lot of women around who did not have skills. And what went around very quickly, that there was an artist in the environment, and everybody wanted to learn, wanted to tap from the talent, the talent that I had. And so I just found myself teaching skills here and there. I also created a platform to learn from women who also had other kinds of skills about taking care of children, who were young mothers. And so we exchanged these skills, and I, the artist, had probably more skills than them, and I would teach them how to do tie and dye, baking, all kinds of things that I had learned growing up as a young girl. So that was the beginning point for this Women and Youth Art Foundation, and I thought that we could actually structure it in such a way that more women, beyond the little group that I had, put together at the University of Ibadan, so they could also gain from that. So every weekend we would go to youth groups, to churches, and then teach for free. And so it got to a point that I was being hired to do that, and I wasn't being paid. And so every weekend I was busy, and yet I wasn't getting any money. So I thought that the best thing to do would be to record some of these sessions into DVD. So I called somebody from the University Media Center. My husband was a professor at the university, so we got these people to come, and I paid them for their work, and so they recorded the session. So anytime they came around to say, can you teach our youth in the church how to make hats? I was, I have something recorded, so you can play it for them. So then I was at home with my kid, and they could take these things and show to a larger audience. Yes. And so in 1994, when we had this idea formulated, in 1994 we recorded the first set of videos, and within 7 years we had them into digital format, and we sold over 300,000 copies. It was incredible. I didn't think that there was so much need for those skills in the Nigerian public or Nigerian art space, but I also realized that we had this very warped educational system, in the sense that there wasn't emphasis on skill acquisition. Everybody wanted to have their daughters or sons study law or engineering, and the schools didn't have art teachers, so there was really a gap that needed to be filled, and that filled that gap. Yeah, so that was the starting point. So with the Women and Youth Art Foundation, we did a number of workshops within Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. When we did them outside of Nigeria, it wasn't for the sake of economic empowerment, it was just for the hobbyists. People wanted to learn a skill, wanted to have a means of letting out pent-up emotions. But in Nigeria, it was more focused on those who wanted to survive through the skill that they've acquired. Yeah, it was a means of survival for them. So the focus was different. So with that, we ran a lot of workshops around Nigeria as well, in local communities, working with people with disabilities, living with all forms of disabilities. People who were visually impaired were taught how to do beadwork. People who were, hard of hearing were taught how to do tie and dye. It was just incredible, the kind of momentum that the Women and Youth Art Foundation garnered within a short period of time.
Thank you, Prof. I don't want to bore you with so many challenges. Of course, we are aware that there can never be a rose without thorns.
Yeah,
okay,
that's true.
To discover this, to venture into this from back since 1994. Okay, at that time we took a lot of challenges, combining with academics too, and we were running a concept of touching lives.
Okay, well, I'll start by saying that when I started this Women and Youth Art Foundation, I I wasn't working in the university. I'd worked for like 4 years, and then I left my job because I was now in a different city. And at the time, my parents felt it was very risky for me to travel from Benin, where I started teaching at the university, to travel to Ibadan. And it was a young family, and I thought that I should just stay off work for a while. And so it was almost like a full-time thing for me to do, even though it was also part-time. Yeah, so I didn't have funding at the time. That was a very difficult moment for me, but I was doing it out of passion. I think I was enjoying doing it, having seen the satisfaction on the faces of people who were learning the skills and how they were able to transfer those skills into making money.
Making money.
Okay. It was only much later that I thought that I could make it into a structured organization, and then we now began to see the need to employ more people, to have more facilities, to reach out, to advertise and all of that. So that came with its own challenges. But one of the things I like to point out is that because we had evolved a platform where it was like a skills circulation kind of thing, where people will come with their own skills and then they learn the ones that they do not know. So we worked with a lot of volunteers, and that volunteering was a new thing for me. But I learned that from my travels to the US. I was IVLP, International Visitors Leadership Program. I was sent to the US for some form of training in cultural preservation, and the idea of volunteerism was really very strong. And I thought I could imbibe that culture, where people are not just expecting to be paid for whatever services that they proffered or offered, but they could actually learn their services and also gain something in terms of talent. So we had a circulation of skills. So if you didn't know how to do hats, I could teach you how to do hats. And if you know how to do beadwork, then you could teach me.
Yes.
So that kept it running for a while until it grew out of my hands, and then we needed to have funding, more structured funding. And unfortunately, we didn't get funding from organizations within Nigeria, unfortunately. And I think that's very sad, because if we are training young people and training the people within the country, I think we should invest, institutions should invest in that. But the first grant we got was from the US State Department. Okay, yeah. And it was a great one because that was a major grant, and it was coming very early in our career. This was in 2011. When I say early, sometimes you get smaller grants before you get a huge grant.
Huge grant, yes.
But it wasn't a grant that was given to me directly. I was to anchor and structure the program for an American artist. I was to structure the program for an American artist who was sent to Nigeria,
yes.
who had opted to do his project in Nigeria.
Okay.
And so there were actually 15 of them, and they had 900 applications across the US.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a US State Department grant for cultural diplomacy. And so this artist, a community-based artist, Brett Cook, offered to come to Nigeria. And the others went to different parts of the world. So they were to learn about the cultures that they were immersed in, and they were also to pass on the American culture. And so I did this program with him because this foundation started in Ibadan. And so his program was based in a secondary school in Ibadan. And so he did a lot of workshops with children. And I thought that since I am based here in Lagos, I work at the university, I should bring him over to the University of Lagos to do a project. So he did a community project with students from different departments, from people in the community. And if you remember the beautiful mural on the wall on the facade of the Department of Creative Arts,
yes,
that was work that was done through that project.
Wow.
And a year after,
it's a product of the community workshop.
Yes,
okay.
And we were the ones that anchored it.
Wow.
And subsequently, we've had quite a number of grants from the US state government. We got of course, I told you about the IVLP, which is something that I'm really very proud of. We have various. We had the US Lagos Consulate grant in 2017. And we did a number of projects with secondary schools, public secondary schools in Lagos. So we went into the schools that didn't have art teachers. They had a lot of children who were yearning to learn about art. I did a lot of workshops. For me, it was interesting because I was able to merge the university experience with community work, and I brought students from the university to sharpen their pedagogical skills.
Exactly.
Got artisans from this environment
Okay.
to teach the students as well, and also the secondary school. And at the same time, the children were now the beneficiaries of all of these beautiful experiences.
That's why it's called community.
It was community,
project.
yeah. But then you could see that at every point,
Yes.
every cluster that we picked on, every group, learned a lot from this rotation of skills. And so we got this grant from the U.S. Lagos Consulate. And then in 2018, we got the U.S. Exchange Alumni Award. So we just be getting awards back to back for the projects that we do with the Women and Youth Art Foundation. So for me, we've done like a lot of community projects. We worked with the School of the Blind in Kappa Oshodi, and that was also a moment of learning because these are children or young people who cannot see, who are visually impaired. But I got to learn that they have what you call the inner eye.
The inner eye, yes.
Yes.
Inside, right?
Yes.
Inside.
They can't see
Yes.
what you're doing. But how do you teach a person that's visually impaired how to bead? How does he see the eye of the bead? So it was also a learning experience for us because we went there with the team, we taught for the entire day, and nobody could get the sequence of beading that we're teaching or that we taught. And so we left very frustrated, and some of us said, we're not going to return to that place. It was not easy teaching there. They to go to the right, to go to the left. But by the time we came back 2 weeks after, all of them were wearing their beads. It was incredible. They were all wearing their beads. So it means that something went in. They learned it. And that also gave us a lot of impetus to do more and more work with the community. So it has been very fulfilling for me. I mean, the passion is there. You're not doing this for money. You're doing this for people to learn, and you see the transformation. That is so key, So you have people who call us. They watch our videos, they call us instantly and say, I just got an award in Jos as a youth corper because I used your CDs to teach young people how to do particular things, and they set up their own businesses. We just call you to say thank you. What else do you need? So sometimes money doesn't give you the kind of satisfaction that this kind of calls give you, and I think that this has been the motivating factor. This has been the moving force for us, and it has been a very beautiful journey. So in terms of funding was a major thing. They allowed us to stay small for a long time, but when we got the funding from the US state government, then we began to move on and became more ambitious and did a lot of were more empowering and more covered a larger audience or base. Yeah.
Wow, thank you, Prof. I really want to ask before we take a short break.
Okay.
We want to ask you: do you think you've gotten to where you envisioned this workshop to be?
Okay, so I would say that in life there's always growth. You start with one step, take the second step. There's always also room for improvement, and I think that one of the things that has come out of this experience is also the founding of the Master Art classes, which is more broad spectrum and caters for many more art areas than what the Women and Youth Art Foundation focused on. So for the Master Art classes, we are doing professional teaching of skill. So we're looking at bronze casting, we're looking at repose, chasing and repose, jewelry production in gold and silver, looking at ceramics. It's kind of broad. So, and we have all the facilities for all of these areas that I've mentioned. So we're looking at people who are not just artists, but those who are also looking to just learn a skill without going to a tertiary institution to stay for many months, many years. So you come here for a week or two and you actually master the art of bronze casting, of jewelry making, hat making, repose, print making. Is kind of broad. And so we're also looking at the possibility of extending the skills, not just having them come physically, because we cannot cater for need. In Nigeria, there's so many people looking for skills. I cannot bring all of them here. So we're also doing online training, so people can actually learn. So you can pay my degree and connect with us online. and learn a skill, which is just incredible. Yeah. So that is it for me. That there's always something to learn, something to add on, and I think that these additions are also making the idea blossom.
I guess when something was going through my mind when you talked about the challenges you had in working with school for the blind, but eventually the joy of it all that eventually found them, beating the marks. And do you still incorporate people like that? Because we're looking at craft now. Someone without sight, without eyes, could you just develop the muscular? Do you still carry them? You have them in your own mind for further programs?
Oh, definitely. I mean, when we say community projects or community programs or community impact, we're looking at those who are not, those who come from disadvantaged populations, and they fall into that category. They usually will not have the kind of opportunities that secondary school children will have, or public school children or even private school children will have. So they're kind of excluded. So those are the kind of people, that's demographics that we work with. We look at youth corpers, for example, who are out in the world and they don't know they're out in the world. Yeah, they still think they're students,
sure.
But they can't realize that now they have to start making their own money. So it's a different thing when you meet with students in the university. They think that, okay, they still have many more years. But when you meet a youth corper realizes that he's already out in the world and wants to learn the skills and he now has to fend for himself or herself. So I think that those populations are the ones we actually focus on. So we do programs with widows, we do programs with youth corpers, with people living with all kinds of disabilities. We also work with people in the Leonard Cheshire home in Ibadan. And so for us that's key and that's the main target.
Okay, thank you. Let me give it to you. Let me give it to you. I think we will allow you to take a short break, and then when we come back, we continue with the next segment of this interaction.